After we have created our index.html and other files, what we're going to do is to check how it looks like when we go to the browser. And to do that, we are going to go to our folder, and then we're going to open the index.html from there. And here we are inside the folder where we're creating our files, or where we have created our files. So the first thing that we're going to do is to just double click on this, and then it will open on the browser. So let's go. And here we have it open on our browser. So at the moment we can see that it is empty, there's nothing else. So to see what happens when we do changes, we're going to go back to our code, and then we're just going to make minor changes. So here's our code. What we're going to do first is just to we're going to write something. We can start by writing hello world, and then after that we're just going to save. We can save from here, or just Control S. After we have added our changes, we're just going to go to our browser again, and first time we'll see that nothing happens. So to see our changes, we're going to refresh the page. There we have our hello world. Now that we have seen what happens when we do changes on our body, so we're going to get started with creating our page. So the first thing that we're going to create here is to create the header, the same way how it looks on the preview I showed you earlier on. So I'm going to remove this, and we're going to start with the header, and then I'm going to create a div. We're going to call it div, and then we're going to give it a class of game-header. So this class, we're going to reference to it when we do our styling, or if need be, we're going to use it on our index.js as our selector. So we're just going to call it class, which is named game header. So if we save this and go to our browser, we'll see that nothing changes, because this is just an element. The element doesn't have any content in it, so that's why it doesn't show anything. So let me show you how it looks like. Remember, we have to refresh the page. Here, if we refresh it, there's nothing. So we're going to continue to add more content on it. Okay, now we're going to add the title of the game. So we're going to call it we're going to give it a header1 tag. So there it is, and we're going to call it tic tac toe. Sorry, let's Control S. There, we have saved it. Now if we go to our browser, let's see how it looks like. There we have it. If I refresh, it will show like this. Now here I'll show you how our target looks like, how we want it to end up looking like. So you see how it looks like here, right? So we're going to make it look like this. So if you check here, we have an image which is of girl code. So let's add that image on our page. So what we're going to do now is to add the image, and then we're going to add a tag called image, and then for all the images we just create it like this, but it needs to have a source. We have a source, and then we give it an equal sign. It also has a fallback alt tag, and then we're just going to give a description of that image. So this will be girl code logo. But the thing is, where is our file? Where we can put our file is to just create a folder here, and then we're just going to call it we're going to call it, let's call it images, and then we're going to say save. But now we need to add that image to this folder, so I'm going to get that image. So note that image, it has to live inside here, right? But I'm going to add the image on our description, course description underneath. So for me, I'm just going to steal it from the current site that we have created. So I'm going to copy, Control C, then go back here and paste it here. So let's go back to now I've copied the image and I've added it to where our current folder is. So you'll just copy it from where you downloaded it and saved it, then paste it on this folder here. Now let's go back to our code and add it to our page. And if you check here now, if you expand this, we can see that the girl code image is there. So to get that image, we're just going to follow where, like, to add the path of that image. So the path of that image from this index HTML, it is just going to be images / girl code. So it will be this. So make sure that you add the file extension also, because if you don't add it, it won't show. Now let's save it. I've saved it. Now let's go and see how it looks like on our page. And here we are on our page. Here we are on our page. So let me just refresh to show that image. There we have the image, but it looks ugly at this moment. So what we need to do is to style it, resize it, and make it look much better. So how we can do that is, let's go back to our code. Most of the time I prefer using something we call the dev tools of the browser. So let's do that before we can. So what I'm going to do is to see what can I do here. Actually, I thought about it. Now let's wrap all of these under a div that we'll call div class. You can just use this div game title. Then we're just going to put everything in here inside our game title, then make it look good. So now let's save this. Now let's go back to our browser. This is our browser. Let's refresh. Still looks the same, but now let's come here. Then the easiest way that I can show you is to show you how to do this will be to use flex on this thing. Then we'll come here and then or you can come here and say class, and it will add this class. Then you say plus, then it will add the game selector, which means we're selecting this class here. So now we're going to say display flex. Okay, we have this displayed as flex. Now the next thing is we have this flex, right? Let's copy this, let's add it to our code, then we'll put it here on our styles, and then we're going to paste it there. Now we have to, let's give this image a class, and I'm going to give it a class of logo, and then I'm going to save, and then I'm going to come back here on my code, CSS code, and then after that I'm going to select the logo. I'm going to say copy like I'm going to create this in here. I'm going to select that logo. So that logo, I'm selecting game dash title and then the child of it, which is logo, and I'm going to give it a width of 200. Let's see what happens on our code now. Let's go to our page. Let's see how it looks like. Let's refresh. Did I save? Yeah, I did save. Oh, our CSS won't reflect there because we haven't, a silly mistake, we haven't imported or included that CSS file on our thing. So we're just going to say to use link. We're going to link it to our HTML and say link, and then say relative style, and then href. Since they're in the same folder, we're just going to give it the name of the CSS, which is styles.css. Now let's save this. Let's see what happens now. Oh, there we have it. There we have it. There we have it. But now if you look at this, these two are not in the same sort of like style, and then we're just going to say inspect. So the first thing, let's remove the margins between around this h1. So now what we're going to do is to go back to our CSS, and then if you check here, game title and h1 is the child of game title. So I'm going to say dot game dash title, and then h1, which is the element name. And then we're going to say margin 0, and then let's save this. Let's see now what happens. Let's refresh. See, now it has moved even further up. So to move it down, we're going to test it on this side. We're going to say actually Flex has a way of us getting it to center vertically, and then we're just going to give it another property of align items. Then the value of that will be center. Now we have it center. We're going to say copy, going to edit on our here. We have to edit here where we define display flex. Now let's save this. Let's see if it stays the same. There, it stays the same. So there we have it, stays the same. Now the next part here will be to now move into, we have created the title, the game title of this. Now the next thing that we're going to do is to now add the body where the game lives. Now we're going to call it, we're going to create a class that we'll call, we're going to create an element which is a div, then we're going to give it a class of, game wrapper. Now there we have it. We have created a game called game wrapper. I mean an element with a class of game wrapper. Now the next thing, let's see how our target looks like. Let's go to the page of our, now look at this, right? We have these, we have the player scores, the computer score. But now let's start by creating this part here, the nodes and the boxes and all those things. So what we're going to do is to go back to our code, inside the game wrapper. Now we're going to create another div that will call, we'll give it a class of, game board, and with that, inside that game board, we're going to create squares. Now we're going to create squares. Since the tic-tac-toe game has like 9 squares, we're going to put them like this. We're going to create, and then we're just going to copy and paste this until they're 9. So we have 1 2 3 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8, and then here's the last one. Now let's save and let's go to our page. Let's see what happens. If we go to our page, we refresh, nothing happens at the moment, right? Nothing is happening at the moment. So now we have to add the border lines and all those things, right? But first, before we do that, let's give our body a background of white, of black, I mean, so that we can have the same as here. So we're going to give our background, we're going to make a background of black so that we can have the same thing as this one. So here we're going to go to our code, then we're going to target this. Not going to give it a class name, so we're just going to use the element name to select, since we only have one body. So we're going to say background color, and then we're going to give it a name of black, or you can use H000 using hex code. Then let's save. Let's go and see how it looks on our page now. Our page looks like this, but now we can't see this part here, the logo and all that. Now let's give, I think if we can check it out here, let's give the game header a background of white. Let's see what happens. Background of white. There we have something. We have something. But now if you check here, we have this border, this line around here. So before we tackle that border, that line there, we're just going to copy this. We're going to copy this and put it on our code. So we're going to select the dot game header, since we have to apply it on this game header, right? On this game header. Then we're just going to paste that background of white. I've noticed that there's a mistake that I made. I've put this game wrapper inside the game header, so I just need to move this under here. Yeah, and then I'm just going to add some indentation like that. Now it looks better. So now let's go back to our page and see what is what. Yeah, so let's go to our page. Let me refresh here, but we still have that line around here, right? So to remove that line, you can see that line is created by this body. So we're just going to add another property here, which is called margin. So we're going to add margins, and then since we just want to remove the margin around there, I'm going to call it margin 0. Now see, the gap is gone. That's good, that's what we want. Now let's just copy this and add it to our code. In our code, we're just going to add it underneath here. There we have it. Let's see if it is gone. Refresh, boom, it is out. But now I think we need to add some spaces here because it is too close and it doesn't look good. So what I'm going to do is to get a padding around this game header. We're going to add a padding of 0 and maybe let's play around with it on the browser first before we add. Let's right click here, inspect. We are inspecting this part. We have to select on this one. So we are going to add a padding, then let's say 0, because we already have like some spaces on top here. So this 0 at the moment is for every thing around here. So we're going to say 0 here. Now we need maybe, let's say, 27 pixel. Now it has added, so this 0 now applies for top and bottom. This 27 applies for the padding on your left and on your right. So I think it looks much better now. So let's take this and paste it on our game header. Let's paste it there. There we have it. We have it there. We save our code. Let's move forward. Let's see what happens now, how our page looks like. Okay, so the next part here, right? So I've pasted the padding here. You can see here. So the next part is to add some styling on these squares and all that. So the first thing that we're going to do is to add the styling for the square. Now we're going to select these squares using this and then this as a child. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to say dot game board, then dot, what is it? We're going to we need to select this square. So game board and the child of square dot square. Then what we need to do is to, let's try by giving it a height of, we need to give those squares a height, and so that they are squares, so give it a height of 150 pixel and then a width of 150 pixel. After that, let's see how it looks like on our page. If we refresh, we don't see anything, but if we come here, we do have our squares. You can see square 1, square 2, square 3, square 4, square 5, square 6. If you check, go for square whatever, and then now, but no one can see that there's a square there. So what we need to do is add some border lines around there to show that they're squares. So now what we need to do is to say, let's give it a border of maybe 5 pixel. We'll see how it goes. 5 pixel, and then we'll say it has to be a solid line, and after that we're going to give it a color of white so that it can be visible instead of giving a color of black. Now let's save and see. Save. Let's go to our page and let's see how it looks like now. Our page here. Now look at it, right? Our squares are like, they are on top of each other, on top of each other, on top of each other. But what we need to do, right? What we need to do is to have our squares like this. You see here, it needs to be stacked to the left of each side. So now we're going to, on this game board, this class here, we're going to use something called grids. So I'm going to come here, say I'm going to use an element of display grid, and I'm going to say game board, and then I'm going to say display as a grid, display as a grid. Let's see what happens. Sorry, but what I did is add this part here. Sorry about that. So I added this and display grid. Now let's go back to our page. Let's see what happens. Let's refresh. Still nothing happens because we didn't specify how many blocks should be in the grid, right? Now let's go back to our code. Now we have to specify our grid. So we're going to use this thing called grid columns, templates for columns, to see how many columns we're going to have in our grid. So now what we're going to do is we're going to say we need to repeat our grid for 3 times, and then we're going to say min max and then 0 and 1 fr. So let's save and see what happens now. Let me go to the page. Here we are on the page. Let's refresh. Look at our blocks. They are so like space around, like we don't have like any, they don't look nice, to put it in a simple way. Now let's go back to our page, but okay, let's play around with it on our elements dev tools. Now let's maybe try to give it a width of, let's say, maybe 500 pixel, but see, we still have the space there. Now let's reduce until the space goes away. Space is getting smaller and smaller. The space is getting smaller and smaller, getting smaller and smaller. We still have the space, getting the space, still getting the space, still getting. We need to try and have this the same size, so we're just gonna keep going, keep going, keep going. Oh, we have it like that, right? We have it like the same size as this. Now what we need to do next, let's copy this and go back to our code. On our code here, we're going to paste it underneath there. But now, because we have defined that each column is like 3, so it divides on this width. Now we don't need this width here, so let's save this. You can refresh here. Let's refresh. Now look at this. This looks much better, but I think let's just put a space between this header and this content here. So we're going to put the space on this game wrapper, right? In this game wrapper, let's give it a padding of maybe let's say 72 pixel, and then let's say, yeah, let's leave it like this now. So we have the padding for top, we have the padding for right, we have the padding for bottom, and we also have the padding for left. So for your information, I'm sorry, like I'm really sorry. So the padding, we have added a padding around here, right? So the padding for top, padding for right, padding for bottom, and padding for left. So now note that the padding goes in a clockwise direction. If you check here, top, right, bottom, left, so it goes in a clockwise direction. So now we're going to copy this and put it on our code. Where's our code? Now remember, we haven't selected, we don't have this game wrapper at the moment, so we're going to add the selector for this. We're going to add the selector for this, which is going to be, let's add it on top here before we start with the game board. Going to say dot game wrapper, and inside here we're going to add our padding. That we have our padding. This is for this part here. Now let's save this. After saving this, right, after saving this, we're going to go back to our page. We're going to go back to our page. We have it here, right? But if you look at our page at this moment, we have these borders on top here. They don't look nice, like all these borders around here, they don't look nice. We're just going to we need to keep borders for this and this and this and this. Now we're going to learn how to see, like, let's first remove all the borders on this first here, on top here. So to do that, we're going to, let's try by removing on this one. We're going to say border top, sorry, border, I'm sorry, border top. We're going to say border top, and we're going to give it none. This is for this, right? Border top, none. But if you look at it, it doesn't look nice, and we need to avoid selecting for each one of them. So what we're going to do is to just use arithmetics to select. So what I'm going to do is to say this, and then we're going to say square nth child. Going to select all the child that are minus n plus 3. So that is going to be this minus 0 plus 3 from 1 to 3. So let's see if we manage to select for all of them. Border top, you can see none. There we have achieved our goal. So let's take this, and then let's take it here. Let's go, and then let's paste it right after this, and then but we have to make sure that let's select for every square that is under the block, I mean the game board. There we have it. There we have it here. There we have added this now. Now the next part here, let's go back to our page. Let's see how it looks like on our page. Let's refresh page. Now we have only removed these ones. These ones. Now let's target these ones. You see them, these ones. We're also going to use arithmetic, like functions and all that. So now let's go back to our code. So if we check here, before we go to our code, let's see, we're going to select for 1, 4, and 7. 1, 4, 7. Those are the ones that we're going to select for. 1, 4, 7. So now to get 1, 4, 7, we can use 3n plus 1, which is like 3 times 0. This starts as 0 times 0 plus 1, which is 1, and then 3 times, let's say 3 times 3 plus 1, which is 3 times 2, 3 times 2 plus 1, which is 4. I'm sorry, my math is killing me, but let's just go to the code and then try it. So to do it, we're just going to, to make it easy, let's copy this, and let's copy this part here, Control C and then Control V. Then we're going to use, we said this 3n plus 1, but we're not selecting border top, we have to select border. Let's go to our code and I'll show you. We're selecting border left, this one here on the left. So back to our code, we're going to say border left. We're just going to change this top to left, then we save. Let's go to our code and see how it looks like. Sorry, I just noticed that I didn't show you. So we're going to say border left here, just copy this, and we added 3n plus 1. Now we're going to our browser, this is how our browser looks. If we refresh, we remove all of those. Now let's target everything at the bottom here. We're going to target everything at the bottom here. So to target everything at the bottom, we're selecting anything from 9, 8 and 7. 9, 8 and 7. So we're going to select these from the bottom, like from selecting from the last. So what we're going to do is just copy this. Let's copy this. I'm sorry, here on the code we're copying this. See, then we have pasted this other part. Now if we check here, we're just going to do the opposite. We're going to select from the last child instead of the first child. So what we're going to call it is called nth last child, then minus n plus 3, same as the first one. So now we're going to call it bottom. Bottom. Now let's save this and see. Let's go to our browser. Let's see if it works. There, we have removed our border. Now the next part is remove our right borders. To remove our right borders, we're going to say, now for our right borders, we're going to take this one. We're going to copy this one, then we paste it underneath here. Then, but now, I'm sorry, so I copied this one and pasted it here, but we haven't made changes. So I just want to explain something to you guys. Now if you check here, we're going to select threes, like 3 times 2, I mean 3 times 1, 3 times 2, 3 times 3. So now we're going to say on our code here, we're going to say this should be 3 here. And one thing you should note, we have to change this to border right. Now let's save this. Let's go to our browser. Let's see what happens. We have created our page, our boxes. Now it looks much better, it looks much cleaner. Now what we need to do next is to add our nodes. We need to add our cycles. Now to add our cycles, right, we're going to try something called pseudo elements. We're going to try something called pseudo elements. Pseudo what? Pseudo elements. I'll repeat it. Now to try pseudo elements, we can try it by, we create pseudo elements by coming here and let's inspect. Let's say okay, we have selected the element. We can just say for this square, we're going to say our pseudo element is going to be, we're going to start with the O's because I think those are the most simple ones. Now we're going to say add, but now after here we're going to say, and we can use before, we can use after, but for this we're going to use before. And then at this moment this pseudo element won't show until you give it a property of content, and it should be empty. So now we have our pseudo element, but it is so empty, like we don't see anything. So what I'm going to do is to say it is a block. I'm going to call it a block. I'm going to say, maybe let's give it a width of let's say 50% of this. Let's give it 50% of this so that it can go from side to side, and another a height of 50, since a circle should be equal on all sides. Now, so that we can see it, we're going to give it a border of let's say 5 pixel, the same as the one's 5 pixel, and then we'll say 5 pixel 5 pixel solid, but we have to make sure that we give it a color of white. We have it here, right? But the reason why it is not showing here is because we didn't tell it. Let's give it there we have our block now. We have our block here. So to make it a circle, we're just going to give it a border radius, border radius of 50%. But one thing we can see, let's make it sort of like bigger, but before we make it bigger, let's center it. To center it, the easiest way to center something is to give it position of absolute, a position of absolute. But look at this, this doesn't, because it is taking the absolute of the whole body. Now we have to make sure that it takes the absolute of this. So by what we need to do is to come here and say we give this a position of relative. To make sure that we don't forget about this, let's just go and add it to our code now. Let's go and add it to our code. So it is in here. So we have, let's save it there, but let's go back and work on this and this. I mean, let's go and work on our circles. So now you can see now they are taking the relative of this. So what we need to do next is to maybe let's just increase the border of all these, and then let's make it probably, let's say 20. I think that looks nice. So to center it, we're going to say top 50%, and then that means it is going to start at 50%. Now let's also do that for the left, and we're going to say 50%. But now to really center it, we have to transform that and then just move it back by maybe 50%, and then we translate it. Since we're doing it on both sides, we're going to say minus 50%. Again, let's say minus 50%. That looks more center. So now let's take this and save it on our code. Or before we save it on our code, we have to see, but we can't have the O's on all of them. An O should appear on one block at a time. So now to do that, we're going to add another class here of square. We're going to call it O. There we have it, right? But we still have it, so we need to select each square that has an O as one that will show the circle. Now let's come here, then to use two classes, we just say dot square and then dot another and dot O, and then let's see. There we have it. We only have it on one. So other squares we can leave them for our nodes and all that. So now we can take this. Right? Let's copy it. Let's copy it to our code. There we on our code now. Let's paste it here. But to follow all the other ones, let's just do this. Let's take this then we do this. Yeah, we have it like that. Now let's see how but now since we have to also, maybe let's edit on a random square. Let's edit on this one. There we have it. To do the same for, let's do the same to add our notes. We're going to go to our code, to our browser. Let's refresh. If you notice that we added it on a random block, and then now let's add a note. Let's just add it here. So we're going to use pseudo classes also. So now to add a pseudo class for this one, we're going to use both before and after. So this is how we're going to do it. We're going to create a cross using before and after. So now to make it simple for us in the future, we're just going to, let's go to our code, then let's create another class that is called X. This would be for all the blocks that have an X, that have an O. Then let's save this HTML. Sorry. So I created a class. Now I added a class here. Now let's select it with while adding our classes also. So let's do this. Let's copy this, then let's do this, and let's say X. Remember, I mentioned to you guys that a block won't show if we don't give it a content of, a pseudo element won't show if we don't give it this property of content, which is at the moment it is empty. But we can add X. Let's see what happens if we say X here, and then let's go to our page. Let's see what happens. Now did we save? Let me check in my code. Yeah, we did save. Okay, cool. So now on our page we did save. We do have this, right? But because of the color, we had to maybe color white or wheat or whatever it is. But you see now that content of X is there. But now we don't want this content of X. We have to create a cross. So we have to create a diagonal, and like two diagonal, but going opposite ways. So now to create an X, we're going to say for this, for the before, what we're going to do is our before, we're going to, let's remove this let's remove it. I've removed it. Now to add our squares, and then we're just going to say, remember we're going to say give it a height of 50% again, 50%. Yeah, let's give it a height of 50% and a width of, to make it the same as the other one, we're going to give it a width of 20 pixel, and then we're going to give it a background color of white. We have it. So let me just remove this. I've removed this. Then we're also going to give it let's say actually let's give it a width, a height of 20 pixel and a width of 80%. Now our thing just looks like this, right? So to make it look better, we're going to say position, we're going to give it a position of absolute. There we have it. We have our block there. But if you check our block has like sharp edges, so we're just going to, actually before we do the sharp edges, let's make it diagonal now. So we're going to put it, let's say top 50%, then left 50%, but it doesn't. Okay, before we go further, let's just transform and rotate it. Let's transform and rotate it. We're going to rotate it by an angle of 45 degrees. So there we have it, but if you check it, it is not centered. It goes out of the way. So now let's just change the top, I mean the left, and then we just go to move it left, and that looks much better, looks more centered. Now let's also center it, and we're just going to reduce this. This looks, let's see, this looks much better, right? Yeah, it looks much better. Okay, cool. So now let's maybe just give it a border radius of, let's say, border radius to make it like not look sharp, but let's just sorry, border radius of 4 pixels, and looks more rounded now. Okay, now let's take this, let's save it on our CSS. We're going to save it on our CSS. We're going to say dish. Going to replace this and then just paste it there. This doesn't look nice. Let me do this. That looks much cleaner. So to do the other cross, we're just going to copy this, paste it, and I'm going to say after, then we save it there. We have it. We have it there, right? There we have it, but we have an after. So now let's go back to our browser. Let's see how it looks like. This looks like the same. It looks like there's only one element, but now if you check here, we have two. We have before and after. So this after one, let's rotate it the opposite way. Maybe let's say minus 45 degrees. Let's see. Oh, we have our cross. That's nice. Okay, cool. So we have our cross now. So let's take this. Let's change. Let's just go to our code. On our code, let's just change this to minus. But one thing that I have noticed from our code, if you check here, there's something that keeps repeating. There are things that keeps repeating. What are those things? The things that keep repeating are things like content, position. Those are repeating on both, and yeah, position. So those things are the ones that they keep repeating. So to avoid having code that repeats, we're just going to group them. So I'm going to take this and then I'm going to paste it, but now they repeat on all X, and the O's. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to paste it here. Then now the next thing that repeats, it is this one. Let me remove this O here. So now it will select on all squares and squares and befores, and I mean afters and befores. So now another thing that repeats, what is it? So let's do this. Let's remove wherever something that repeats. Okay, we have it like that, right? But now if you check again, before and after, most of the things here are similar. The only thing that is different between these two is this degree. right? We can agree on that. So what I'm going to do is take this, copy this, come here, then edit with killing two birds with one stone. So now I'm going to remove everything here. Okay, our code now looks short and simple, right? Okay, let's save. Let's see if anything changes on our browser. Let's refresh. Oh, something went wrong. What happened? What happened? Okay, now our befores and afters are no longer showing. Let's go and check what is happening. Let's go and check what is happening. Let's see. What could be happening? What could be happening? Okay, I found the mistake. So what I'm going to do is to remove this part and then just I'm going to take this, then paste it back here, and then paste it also here, then remove it from here. Let's save it. Oh, I'm sorry. What I did is we had a group of them, so I re-added them on these two blocks. So that's what I did. Now let's go back to our code. Let's see what happens. In our code, let's refresh. Now we have our nodes and circles again. So the next thing, if we can go to our funnel, we have this thing called which are scores, right? We need to, let's add them. Let's add our scores, and let's add our scores. But before we add our scores, let's see how it look like if one player wins. So we're going to add these x's across 1, 2, 3. We're going to add them on our code. It's simple. To get a diagonal, we're just going to say on this one, the first one, we're going to say x, and then on the last one again, we're going to say x. Let's see if this really wins the game. Let's go to our page on our browser. Let's refresh. There we have it. So now remember, this at this moment this is not interactive, so we're just adding on our next lesson. We will make it interactive by adding JavaScript and all those things. So what we need to do now is to add the scores on each side of the block. To add the scores, we're going to go to our code. Let's go to our code. We're going to add it on here and here. So on our code now, this is our code inside here on our game wrapper, because our score shows on the game wrapper. Now let's put this and we'll say div class, and we'll give it a class of game score. Inside there, we're going to show whose score it is, and we're going to say for this side it will be a player. The next one is to show which symbol the player is using. So I'm going to use a div, and I'm going to give it a class to show for easy selection, and I'm going to say player symbol, and then we're going to give it these will be crosses for our nodes. And then now we're going to show the score. Div and div, then we're going to say the actual score, and I'm going to give a class of score, and then score will be 0. Okay, cool. So let's save it and see how it looks like. I'm sorry guys. Okay, so let me repeat what I was talking about. So now in here we're going to say, going to add a div which is a game score. So what I'm going to do here is to say dot game score for abbreviation, like creating elements using abbreviation. So dot score, then just tab, then new line, and then I'm going to say h2 tab. Then we have like the title of the player, and then we'll say player. This will be you who will be playing the game. Then now let's show the symbol of the player, and we'll say div dot player symbol. This will be the class player symbol, then like that. Then I'm going to show the player would be using X. Now let's create where we will show the score, and then we'll say dot score. Then we're just going to show 0. Initially every score would be 0. Okay, cool. Now let's save. Let's save this. Let's go to our page. Let's go to our page. Here on our page, let's refresh. Our things are not showing because you can see we have them here, right? But remember, we gave the class, like by default, the name of the color of each text will be black, but inside here everything has to be white. So what I'm going to do is come here, we're gonna go to our code, and then I'm going to say in here, right, we're going to say the color of everything inside here should be white. There we have it. So let's add it on our code. Let's go to our code, say which is under the game wrapper, and then we'll say color is white, which is hash f. Yeah, 3 F's or 6 F. It's up to you what you need, or just write the white color. Now what we need to do next is to go back to our browser. We can see that these fonts are not really that nice, so I'm going to change the font for our game, and then we're just going to change overall on all the text elements. So now I'm going to go back to my code, and say on everything inside the body, the font family will be, I'll just check a random one, like this one. So now there we have it like this, right? Let's see what happens to our code when we do those changes. Now look, this looks much better, right? But on our target, we also have like computer. So to do the computer score, we also have the computer score. To do the computer score, let's go back to our code. In our code, what we have inside here, at the end we will just copy this, then after the game board we paste. Now in our game board we can just change this to computer, but our player symbol is sort of like an O. It is an O, right? So the score will remain the same. So now let's save this. Let's see what happens on our browser. Let's refresh the page. There we have the two. But remember, on our target, which is this one, we have them side by side. Okay, cool. So now what I'm going to do is, on this game wrapper, right? This game wrapper, we're going to display everything as display flex, right? Let's display flex. So now I'm going to say this, it is going to be display flex, but it doesn't really look nice. Like let's try to center everything. So let me just, before we forget this one, let me take this and put it on the code. In our code, so we're going to put it on game wrapper. Game wrapper, which is this one, and then we're just going to paste it there. Now the next part is to make sure this part here is centered. So to center this, we can, the simple way is to come here on game score and target this one and this one, and then we'll say the flex grow of these two, the flex grow of game score flex, then it will be just one. There we have it centered. Now let's take this, our game score, we're going to say inside here, right? Our game score here, we just pasted what we copied. Now going back to our code, our page, our browser, you can see that these, they are not really looking good. It's too close to this one, so let's center them so that we have like the same space on this side and same space on this side. So now we're going to say all the text should align to center. Much better, looking much better. So now let's add it on our code also. Adding it on our code. Going to say text align center. Then there's another thing that on our browser, if we look into on our browser, it is much better to probably maybe have this centered, like so centered vertically. So a simple way of doing that is, if we can come here, then we give this as, let's say, display flex. We're going to use display flex, but now it looks like this because now it is showing flex, like what is flex direction as this flex direction is row, using rows. So now let's change the flex direction to columns and see what happens. Flex directions to column, so it shows going down. And the great thing about flex now, like with Chrome, they have added, I think this is also on Firefox, they've added this that makes it much easier for you to work with flex, like display flex box, or in a way. So now if you check here, if we want to center it vertically, we can come here and say, just click there, then it will add this justify content center. So now if we look at this is now centered. You can see yourself that the spaces between here are the same. So now let's do this. Let's take this, let's just copy this, what we just added now, and then let's add it to our code. To this. There we have it. We have added it now. And then one thing that we're missing is adding this display flex. Let's save it. Let's go to see if our thing stays the same. Yes, it stays the same. But if we look again, these scores like are not visible. The symbol and the score, they are not really visible. So what we can do now is to say, let's target this player symbol, right? Let's see, what can we give it? Let's give it a font size of maybe 27 pixel. I don't know why I really love using 24 pixel. And let's make it bold also. Font weight the font weight of maybe let's say bold, much clearer. Now let's take this and paste it on our code. Remember, it is inside GameScore, so let's target it using this parent of GameScore and then say yes. Let's save. Let's go to our browser again. Now let's also increase the font size of this. Let's give it maybe, let's make the score a little bit bigger, and then we'll say the score will be font size of maybe, let's say 32 pixel. Let's see, looks much bigger. Then let's also add a space on top, and we'll just margin top. Then we'll say maybe 16 pixel. Let's see, 16 pixel, it looks much better. Let's take this, let's take it to our code. We're going to paste it there. So same with the player symbol, we're going to target it using the, just in case later on we have to add another score that is somewhere else and it has different styling, so we're going to target it using the parent. So now let's save this. Let's see, control save. Let's go to our browser. In our browser we have this. Let's refresh. We have this, looks much better. Now we're going to get to the most interesting part about